It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S., who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th. Fox News correspondent Carl Cameron has details in the first of a four-part series.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States. There is no indication that the Israelis were involved in the 9/11 attacks, but investigators suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are, quote, tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, evidence linking these Israelis to 9/11 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information. Fox News has learned that one group of Israelis, spotted in North Carolina recently, is suspected of keeping an apartment in California to spy on a group of Arabs who the United States is also investigating for links to terrorism. Numerous classified documents obtained by Fox News indicate that even prior to September 11th, as many as 140 other Israelis had been detained or arrested in a secretive and sprawling investigation into suspected espionage by Israelis in the United States. Investigators from numerous government agencies are part of a working group that's been compiling evidence since the mid-90s. These documents detail hundreds of incidents in cities and towns across the country that investigators say, quote, may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. The first part of the investigation focuses on Israelis who say they are art students from the University of Jerusalem and Bezalel Academy. They repeatedly made contact with U.S. government personnel, the report says, by saying they wanted to sell cheap art or handiwork. Documents say they, quote, targeted and penetrated military bases, the DEA, FBI, and dozens of other government facilities, and even secret offices and unlisted private homes of law enforcement and intelligence personnel. The majority of those questioned, quote, stated they served in military intelligence, electronic surveillance intercept, and/or explosive ordnance units. Another part of the investigation has resulted in the detention and arrests of dozens of Israelis at American Mall kiosks, where they've been selling toys called Puzzle Car and Zoomcopter. Investigators suspect a front. Shortly after the New York Times and Washington Post reported the Israeli detentions last month, the carts began vanishing. Zoomcopter's webpage says, we are aware of the situation caused by thousands of mall carts being closed at the last minute. This in no way reflects the quality of the toy or its saleability. The problem lies in the operator's business policies. Why would Israelis spy in and on the U.S.? A General Accounting Office investigation referred to Israel as Country A and said, quote, according to a U.S. intelligence agency, the government of Country A conducts the most aggressive espionage operation against the U.S. of any U.S. ally. A defense intelligence report said Israel has a voracious appetite for information and, quote, the Israelis are motivated by strong survival instincts which dictate every facet of their political and economic policies. It aggressively collects military and industrial technology, and the U.S. is a high priority target. The document concludes, quote, Israel possesses the resources and technical capability to achieve its collection objectives.
A spokesman for the the Israeli embassy here in Washington issued a categorical denial, saying any suggestion that Israelis are spying in or on the U.S. is, quote, simply not true. There are other things to consider, and in the days ahead, we will take a look at the U.S. phone system and law enforcement's methods for wiretaps, and an investigation into the possibility that both have been compromised by our friends and allies overseas. Brett?
Carl, what about this question of advanced knowledge of what was going to happen on 9/11? How clear are investigators that some Israeli agents may have known something?
Well, it's very explosive information, obviously, and there's a great deal of evidence that they say they have collected, none of it necessarily conclusive. It's more when they put it all together. A bigger question, they say, is how could they not have known? Almost a direct quote, Brett.
This going to the fact that they were spying on some Arabs, right?
Correct.
All right, Carl, thanks very much.
Because, of course, other spy rings have been caught in the US in the last decade, most notably the so-called dancing Israelis who were arrested shortly after 9/11. They were seen celebrating the collapse of the Twin Towers.
Trace Gallagher. Thank you, Trace.
That Israelis who worked at the World Trade Center were warned by the Israeli government to take the day off on 9/11.
And also the alleged art student spy ring, which was rounded up in 2002. And they, again, were supposedly Israeli Mossad agents. Now, both of these spy rings weren't prosecuted. And, in fact, the stories have been quietly removed from things like Fox News websites and things. And the spies, or alleged spies, were just quietly deported back to Israel. There was no political hoo-ha. There was no media hoo-ha. And there was no...
The United States is committed to Israel's security. We are committed to that special bond.
But particularly in the Middle East, millions of people believe Israeli agents were involved in the attack. And they claim there is a basis for their suspicions. Moments after the planes hit the World Trade Center, eyewitnesses reported seeing a group of young men apparently celebrating.
I grab my binoculars and I'm trying, to look at the Twin Towers. But what caught my attention, down there, I see this van parked. And I see 3 guys on top of the van. They seemed to be taking a movie. And I could see that they were like happy. They're laughing. They didn't look shocked to me.
This part of New Jersey has a large Muslim community. It would turn out that 3 of the 9/11 hijackers had lived there. A major terrorist manhunt began, and just 6 hours after the attack, the van was stopped at a roadblock by patrolman Scott DiCarlo.
We were asked to detain the van and the passengers. They were just removed from the vehicle, patted down for safety precaution, and detained.
911 call at 410 Park.
I think once the FBI arrived, one of them stated that they were on our side. There's something to that effect. The mood was confusion. As people were driving by, they were screaming all sorts of excerpts. Profanity, things to that effect. Nothing that I'd care to repeat.
3-1 days, they're in service.
Over 2 months of interrogation began. The FBI discovered the men weren't from Al-Qaeda. They were Israelis. An enduring conspiracy theory began, that they were Israeli field agents who'd uncovered the 9/11 plot in advance. Israel had deliberately failed to warn the US authorities because it wanted to ensure that American public opinion was hostile to the Arab world. Channel 4 traveled to Israel and spoke to 3 of the 5 men arrested that day to hear their side of the story.
One of the neighbors gave a call to the feds and tell there is a white van with 5 Arab people. As you see, I'm blonde, blue eyes. And he told there is a bomb in a white van. He gave the number, 5 Arab people, and they're on the way to Manhattan to make a suicide.
I was the driver. The policeman took his gun and put it in my head.
Where are the bombs? Where did you want to do the suicide? And I don't know nothing about what to say.
But I told them that I'm just a tourist from Israel, I'm Jewish. And he told me, don't talk, if you talk I'm going to shoot you.
People were spitting on us from the street. They are passing with the cars and spit on us. Because they thought that we are the Arabs. They were looking for someone to blame.
A passerby took these photos of the police searching the van. 5 men were inside it. Some had dual nationalities and were carrying more than 1 passport. Others had flight tickets to leave the US within days. Fearing robbery, one had over $4,000 hidden in a sock.
They were ripping things, they took the camera, they were screaming at us all that time. Put your head into the ground or we were gonna shoot you.
They told interrogators they were working for Urban Moving, a shipping and storage firm run by an Israeli businessman who often employed Israeli students without work permits. The men say there was an innocent explanation for what was found in the van and their behavior on 9/11. They were, they say, simply on a working holiday.
We heard in the news that one of the planes was crashing down the building, and we thought it was an accident at the beginning. So we went up to the roof of Urban Moving, and we saw the building burning.
There is a better view from a building in Jersey that is up a hill, a straight line to the World Trade Center. We decided to go up there. It's like 2-3 minutes from the office. Stand over there and take some pictures. Everyone wants pictures like this in his camera.
Their boss at Urban Moving, Dominic Suter, was questioned by the FBI, but then disappeared back to Israel. It left lots of unanswered questions and fueled suspicion about the 5 men. Investigators seized the firm's computers, and the investigation took on a new urgency with multiple lie detector tests.
They continued to ask, did you know the terrorists? Did you know where they flew from? Did you know what they were supposed to do? And the answer all the time is no, I don't know even what you talk about.
The FBI wasn't satisfied. Channel 4 has learned from intelligence sources that some of the men's names were already known to American counterintelligence. Paul Kurtzberg admitted serving in an Israeli army anti-terrorist unit. He refused to take a lie detector test for 10 weeks.
I was serving in a special unit in the army, and it's not a big secret or something like that. But there are things that I have to keep to myself as loyal to my country.
The story that the feds build is a very good story. When you hear their story, you start even to believe it inside. Okay, maybe I'm a spy. I'm sure that I'm not, but the story is so good, so maybe I am.
Yuval Aviv is a counterterrorism advisor to the U.S. Congress, but was once a spy for Israel's secret service Mossad. He says Urban Moving was a front company for Israeli intelligence, and that some of its workers were spying illegally in the U.S.
Israel has engaged in intelligence gathering in friendly countries. Some of it is done with permission, and some of it probably has been done without permission in areas that is vital to Israeli interest, where large Arab communities operate and live, where there's a lot of fundraising for terrorist activities in the Middle East. That's the old undercover. This is the old way of gathering intelligence, which America has not used. If a decision is being made to put a bomb under a building during and after a prayer on a Friday night in a mosque, you have to be in the mosque. You will not be able to do it from a satellite.
Sources close to Israeli intelligence have told Channel 4 that Urban Moving produced no information that could have prevented 9/11. But whatever the truth of the conspiracy story, it's flushed out the possibility that Israel spies on America, its closest ally, an espionage tactic that both governments would prefer kept secret.
There are certain type of information that and methods of collections that you don't want to share with the local host country. Systems that you use, contacts that you make, undercover operations that you penetrating other terrorist networks. Those types of information you don't share with anybody.
The Urban Moving 5 were eventually deported to Israel for visa violations. Channel 4 understands, from sources close to U.S. intelligence, that the condition of their release was that Israel promised not to spy in the U.S. without permission. Then, as now, the Israeli government publicly denies it spies in the U.S.